Hey everybody. We're excited to be back with you. And I get to say we're this time because I
Yes.
get to be joined by my wife, Heather. And this is practical wisdom for empowering children, mainly 12 and under, to overcome medium challenges. Some of you out there have children that have challenges with ADHD like symptoms or other challenges, emotional, behavioral, and maybe you're not even exactly sure the nature of the challenges, but you know your child has or is struggling to a degree that you would like to see them improve and overcome those challenges. Maybe you're at a place where you just have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of doubts. Maybe you're in a place where you feel like, hey, AJ, everything is going pretty good. And actually, I don't know if I said my name. I'm AJ McMahon. This is Heather McMahon.
Hello.
Hello, we're here. Okay, this is totally unscripted. All right, I asked Heather to be here today because she is a woman who has really walked out this life. And so we're just talking about real life talk today in part 4 of this series. And in real life talk, I just wanted the opportunity for y'all to hear from a real life person about what it's like to parent, raise, be challenged by daily with a strong-willed child, particularly a
Yes.
mom with a son. That is a dynamic that is one of the most challenging dynamics out of love and the opportunity that we have to raise children. A lot of times, boys with their moms, that can be just a really, really run for the money type difficult thing. So hope y'all can hear us okay. We're not, I'm not, my wife maybe, but I'm not savvy necessarily with kind of the technological stuff, but we're just going to go with it
Mhm.
in faith, in God, and just let this be some real talk today in this practical wisdom. You can see other parts of the series in the description. Please like and subscribe so we can stay connected in your journey and your real life journey to empower your child, wherever they might be, 12 and under, to overcome the challenges that you may have in mind or be concerned with. So I'm just going to ask Heather, we're just going to have a dialogue. Again, not scripted. Our 6-year-old son, he's soon to be 7. Isaac may come in, he may not. We're just going with the flow here,
Yes.
which is what you have to do in life. So,
Hmm.
Heather, I just want to ask you first. First, thank you for being here.
Sure, babe.
And I know I'm trying to look at the camera. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to look at the camera or you or what's natural.
I
I
think
don't
we could do
know.
both.
Yeah,
I
we'll
keep
figure
looking
it
in the
out.
wrong spot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. First thing, God gave me a lot of this throughout time.
Hmm.
This empowerment for children 12 and under. And
Hmm.
as my wife, the thing that it was little, a little frustrating at first, but what I
For you or
appreciate,
for me?
well, for
Or for
you,
both
for
of us?
me, because what I mean is when we had Isaac
Hmm.
almost 7 years ago,
Hmm.
um, and I am this, you know, uh, expert, right, with parenting,
Hmm.
and but this was Isaac is your first child. Now we have you have a child through marriage, a bonus daughter,
Yeah.
Tyra,
Hmm.
and you value her and you love
Hmm.
her like your own, and such a beautiful thing. But Tyra is 20, right? So
Hmm.
now you're raising this child Isaac from birth. Uh,
Hmm.
First experience. And what was a little frustrating, but what I really value is that you, just because I was your husband or had this information, these books that you can find on powerofable.com, you didn't just, it didn't seem to me you just kind of took it and bought it. You had to walk your own path of
Hmm.
trying to see what you believed, what you thought was right, in raising your child and finding your own way. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what it's been like to have a son and what we would call a strong-willed child. And if you want more
Hmm.
information about that, you can find that in other videos where we talk about the inner temperaments, where a strong-willed child is basically motivated from within. It's nothing that anybody's done wrong or nothing that is wrong with them. They're just motivated from within to have life on their terms, to have life their way. And we've been blessed with Isaac, who has a strong-willed temperament, which the strength of that is independence. But let me stop talking and just kind of ask you, what has it been like for you? And again, I want to thank you for coming on, because this is not scripted. This can be a challenge, just kind of be thrown in there, but you just have had the courage and love and wisdom to just come here and want to share with people. So what would you like to share with people about just kind of the journey of figuring it out sort of for yourself, what you think is best in trying to raise your son, a strong-willed child?
Yes. Well, thank you, babe. Thanks for inviting me on. It's been kind of a dream of mine for the two of us to do ministry together, or to do, podcasts or different things. So when you asked 2 hours ago, I said, okay, yes, let's make it happen. This question, it's causing me to reflect back, 7 years ago. How was I, understanding the material that you were sharing? And now it's not abstract anymore. It's not out there. This is in our home. This is an opportunity for me to learn as a parent. And so I remember I just had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions about, okay, well, most of it was easy to absorb, and easy because the way that you communicate it is not at a PhD level you don't have to be a counselor to understand. And that's what I love about how you present the material, even to me, in our conversations. So most of it was easy to absorb, but there were certain parts, the parts about discipline, where, okay, how are we going to navigate that? How am I going to navigate that? And I remember having just a lot of questions, within myself, to God, questions that we've talked about. And so it was a process. So I want to encourage other moms out there, other parents, that it's okay to have a process. It's okay to not have all the answers right away, because it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like I need to get it right, and I need to get it right now, because this child is growing. I'm in a moment of process, but they're still growing and they're still maturing. And so I would say it was challenging, but part of the process is being resilient and and persistence. And so I think that is not only with our child, but within ourselves. And if we're with a partner, or you're co-parenting, or you have other caregivers that are helping, it's a process with them too. So giving yourself permission to not have it perfect right away and ask those questions, I think, is valuable, because then when you implement your plan, you'll be sure that this is something from within you, not just something from on the outside. Even though we are partners in life, we're one, it was still something that I had to journey through.
Yeah.
And you were patient. You were kind and patient. And, he wasn't like, this is the way, like, I see the light. It was okay. You can have your process and let me know, let's keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And, thank you for being here and sharing. And what do you feel was something, we're just talking about real life talk. What do you feel like was something in raising, Isaac? And, like a lot of parents out there will say, hey, this is not, we're not saying that we don't value the raising. It's just that it's tough. At times, and not because we don't love, but just because it's part of the job, part of the territory, not because our children are broken, but because, we live in a broken world, and we're trying to raise children in that. And for you, what would you say is something that was maybe where there was either doubt or difficulty or something you had to navigate as a mom?
Yes, I would say from a young age, our son is such a gift, such a blessing, and he's always been very strong-willed. And that's something I love about him, but it creates a tension there, because yes, I want you to be independent, and I want you to think critically, and I want you to have your own voice, but I also want obedience. And that's kind of an old school word, but as caregivers, as parents, there are so many times where we need our child to, for example, trying to get out the door, and we need to be at school on time. And I need you to get your socks and shoes on. And when there's resistance or there's delay, there's, this, well, I want to do this. They may not say it, especially when they're young. They'll just do their own thing because they have their own process. So that was and still is at times, challenging to navigate how to empower him, but also how to provide loving and firm discipline. So I think that part of the LEAP process, if we're referencing that part of the affirming is easy for me, but the accountability was where I had to navigate. How will I provide that accountability so he can learn, so he can have those life skills, not only as a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, but as an adult. And so when I would zoom out and we would talk about this, we want our child to be equipped in life to understand, yes, there are rules. And yes, sometimes they can be challenged, but we also need to respect the authority, even if we don't agree with them. So yeah, I would say that accountability part. Affirming is very easy for me. I'm a natural encourager, but that accountability, the truth of you need to listen. When I say to do this, you need to listen. And so, yeah, we can talk more about that if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk more about that. As far as the LEAP process, acronym L, love, that we want to make sure that the children in our care know that we love them, or whoever is working with them through the process, especially when it comes to any type of, firm and consistent discipline that's coming from a person that the child knows loves them. E, expectation of excellence, one specific goal, one specific focus, that there can be so many challenges, but to focus on one specific challenge to help your child overcome at a time. Empowering that with affirming with words, accountability with actions, and then P, perseverance, to just stick with your plan and not give up until hopefully you see the changes that you want, that God wants for them. And so discipline, you mentioned that a couple of times.
Yes.
Maybe let's talk about that. It seems like something on your heart to talk about. And so however you're led to share about that, I'd love for you to talk about your journey, real life talk when it comes around to discipline.
Real life talk. Yeah. Well, I think, and you've talked about this perhaps on some of the videos, where a child will respond differently to the female caregiver compared to the male. And so early on, that was very frustrating because, as a woman, I have a lot of words, and some men may have a lot of words as well, but that comes through with discipline. So I needed to learn how to really rein that in, because what is he actually hearing? Am I being clear? But also, when my hubby would come home, it's like, Isaac, I need you to do this. Yes, sir. Okay. But when mommy says it, it's, I don't want to, or he's doing something else, and he's, and we've grown in that, definitely. But still, there is a difference of how when he interacts with daddy, and even when daddy is around, he is much more mindful of what I'm saying and what I'm asking him to do. And yes, ma'am, we're teaching him that. We're in the South here. It was a little different for me coming from the North, but I do see the benefit of a child having respect in the community and teaching them that at home. So maybe you want to speak into that, the differences between the female and the male caregiver, and how, and I would say for the female caregivers, not to get resentful or jealous, or, but just to be in our process and to be united. If you're with another person that's providing discipline that is a male, whether that's a grandfather, uncle, or a partner, to remind yourself that you're a team.
Yeah. I mean, you out there may see this in your dynamic, or you may not, or maybe this is something hopefully that might open your eyes to that. What I see a lot, and what we don't talk about in our mental health field, is that children typically, or a lot of times, have a natural response to males that's different than females. They just do. Whereas I say, like, if it's coming to like school or grades, there a lot of times men or certain male figures for that child will get an A in respect just for showing up, because children kind of have a natural kind of sensitivity to males, a natural kind of fear. So they may be more willing to listen or comply, or there can be some differences there where, typically with the female caregivers, children know about their loving dedication and their compassion. And to them, it's not that that's a weakness. It's just more so that I think children kind of don't have that natural fear, of them. A old mentor, not an old, but a former mentor of mine, said, hey, if you're out in the wild, who is it that's the protecting the bear cubs, right? It's the mama bear, right? The mama bear is protecting the bear. Who knows what the male bear could be doing, but the mama bear is protecting the bear cubs. They know the mama bear is going to protect them, look out for them. So they're not afraid of the mama bear, the big old grizzly. They might be like, oh, he's my dad, but I don't know, kind of thing. And so it's kind of like that, in the wild of our homes and our lives. And it's not something where men can or should be prideful about if there's a difference, because it's not a failure on anybody's part, or it's not a thing that, well, I just, they listen to me. Well, I mean, yeah, but there's some natural dynamics where a lot of times men can have a leg up. And it doesn't mean that everybody's seeing that, in your dynamics, but it is actually a very common dynamic. Now, you might, when you look at your situation, you might see how the child responds differently to a coach, or a certain teacher, or a grandparent, or sometimes, people get into new relationships, have blended families, and another male may come in and they may kind of see a difference, and they're kind of looking for that. They're looking for kind of this, authority and leadership, from a male perspective, and may kind of be tempted to sort of turn that over a little bit sooner. And I say that because the need is there, yet remember the Ellen leap. The first step is making sure that child knows that they're loved by that person. Again, not that person loves the child, but the child knows that they're loved by that person before they really, really are leaning into the expectation of excellence and really reinforcing the affirming accountability, because the accountability is with those actions. So I hope this is clear. You can ask questions in the comments, but not, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
but
no,
with
great.
the L, something that was on my mind this morning with a video that I had watched just yesterday with L is that we know as parents that we love our children unconditionally, but do they know, especially when they're in trouble, especially when they've made a mistake or they have some discipline, are we following up with that love to show them that love in a practical way? Because we know in our mind, of course, we love our children, we love them unconditionally, but how are we showing that, demonstrating that in a way that their little hearts can receive? Because especially for that new person, or if you've had a time of away and then now you're coming back as a caregiver, just building that bond. But I would say all the time, I'm still working on that, when we have discipline, and then following that up with, I love you no matter what, and giving a hug or spending time. We're not pushing them away because they've made a mistake or because we've had to discipline them.
So what's the difference when discipline between like this love you're talking about, right? Affirming that love, but then also, timing, and also making sure, because I think a lot of caregivers out there struggle with, am I doing the right thing?
Yes.
When their children are, upset or hurting or crying, they may worry about, how's this going to affect our relationship? How's this going to affect them emotionally and mentally? They may feel guilt, maybe because of how they were raised or what they come up with. The ideas of discipline, and even lovingly firm discipline, may seem kind of scary, or because of societal norms or pressures. So how do you do that where you're, leaning into the discipline, but you're like, and with the love, however, you're having an understanding that you're not trying to like love on them to sort of make up for the discipline.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's such a good question. I feel like that could be its own podcast. But for the brief perspective, I would say we have to be settled inside of ourselves. That was my big thing that I spoke of earlier. I had to be settled within myself that if I'm going to provide the discipline and how I'm going to do that, the method, then that comes from within, not from something my counselor said or a friend or my husband, and that was my process of understanding I'm okay with this discipline. And then afterwards, I am showing love, not because, and I had feelings of guilt. I mean, we talk about, I'd cry about it. I mean, there were times that, especially in the beginning, that first year probably of being consistent, it was a challenge. And so reminding myself of what is true about discipline actually is a form of love, because if I don't hold my child, if we don't hold our child accountable, then he's not going to see the consequences of actions that are harmful to him, harmful to others, harmful to the community. And so when he is an adult, he's going to have some real consequences that are even more harsh. So we talk about like loving in the nest and how this discipline is love, and how then we get to nurture them, we get to love them, we have a relationship with them beyond what, let's say they're at a store and they want something and they steal it because they didn't have consequences before from actions that weren't okay, and now they're in front of a police officer, and that is a much harsher consequence. So I know it's kind of a silly example, but teaching them in the nest that they're loved and nurtured through discipline is, I think, it just has to stem from within. You have to believe it in the core of who you are. And if you're a believer in Christ, incorporate your spiritual beliefs in this, because he will also guide you and the Holy Spirit will give you peace. And if you don't have peace, then I would say maybe you're still in your process, and to discern what is best for you, and to talk to trusted friends that are like-minded. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think, I think you did great. I mean, especially since this is impromptu and we're just here to share and hopefully encourage people. I would like to ask, a lot of times when I'm working, and I'm a licensed counselor, and I don't come to you in these series really as a counselor, but to share the wisdom that I've been given that hopefully can be added to your wisdom out there. Because when we're talking about practical wisdom, we're not talking about the wisdom that just comes from me or Heather. We're talking about practical wisdom, and really the importance of you understanding that you have practical wisdom, right? There are things from this series and these videos and our experience and our journey together that you'll take because they apply and they resonate with your wisdom, and it's going to be a great fit. Because I do not want you to think that it's about taking somebody else's stuff, like Heather was saying. It's really kind of having that internal, what did you say, belief or assurance or motivation. I can't remember. Knowing, conviction. Yeah, those kind of things. Let me divert a little bit. Talking about real talk. Yeah, I was convicted. We were convicted that we were brought together in love. You see here in the video, if you could tell, she's a little bit higher.
Not that much taller.
I know. In real life, my wife is just slightly taller than me. So the videos kind of, look at her, just kind of like, but that's kind of real talk. But it's like conviction of kind of knowing that, hey, this is the path for me. Like we had to have a conviction of knowing this was the path for us, to walk down and become married. To have conviction about this is the path of me to be able to empower my child, and that is important to come from your wisdom, and then letting that gel with another source. Like Heather said, it might be a spiritual source, it might be a friend source, it might be a professional source, but hopefully maybe one or two other sources that combine to help you put together a plan that you believe in and can be convicted about. So when we're talking about discipline, a lot of times when, as a counselor, parents come in or caregivers, and I say caregivers to mean people that are directly involved in trying to raise or bring up a child, and they could come from all walks of life. It could be adopted or foster or family members, or just people that have just dedicated their life and time. It could be professionals. I mean, people that just say, hey, I'm dedicating my life and energy to trying to bring up a child in the way they should go. So when people come in and they start to talk about discipline, it's very interesting, because whenever the people are talking about lovingly firm discipline, particularly with anything that might be outside of the the status quo or what kind of the common forms. Like people can talk about timeout or something like that with their heads held high. But anytime someone mentions something like spanking, again, in appropriate, loving ways, we're not talking about the forms that would be considered abuse or harmful in any way. And I know a lot of times those things are, it's kind of all lumped in one category, but in wisdom and practical wisdom, they're not. And we get the opportunity to seek out practical discernment. So we're talking about, people bring up spanking in a way that is to empower their children in love and wisdom, and kind of those methods, they still will usually kind of duck their heads. I spank, or kind of, turn, there's some type of thing where there's some type of shame to it. There's some type of, consternation about it, people not feeling like it's an okay thing, although they know in their wisdom, because in their loving relationships and in their desire, they're trying to empower their child. And we're not just talking about discipline as far as spanking. It's just that I want to include that in the conversation because a lot of times it's cast out. And we get an opportunity to look at things for what they are, not what the world or even our hurt experiences might sort of align them to be. And so sometimes we get to look at hurt, we get to look at difficulty, we get to look at measured pain in a way to understand how and if it can be appropriate to empower my child to overcome the challenges. And sometimes that can be the real missing piece. So what would you say out there, real talk, what would you say about discipline in your journey? And again, I don't want to put you on the spot as far as saying anything you're not comfortable with, but what would you say has been kind of part of your challenge, part of your process in, I guess I would like to, because we're saying the words discipline, but I'd love, to whatever degree you're comfortable, you can speak to it a little bit more specifically, let people know what you mean about discipline and what you've come to understand about that. And kind of let's end on that today. Sort of what's been your journey with discipline? What have you come to understand, accept, believe, and what's that been like?
Yeah, this is a tough question. And we did talk about this beforehand a bit. I said, I don't know if I'm, it's uncomfortable to talk about because of all the reasons you shared earlier. But if this would help other parents or even other moms,
it's up to you, just whatever. Yeah, you don't have to.
I just don't want to. I want to push pause. Yeah, I would say it was hard to. I'm not tearing up because I made the wrong choice. I think. Because it was a process of learning, what would be beneficial for him. And so it was a process to decide, would I discipline using spanking as a method? And, I was, spanked a little bit as a child, and it wasn't traumatic or anything like that. It was healthy. But just in our day and age, it's like you said, it can be almost this shameful thing. And so it was a journey of learning what would that look like to be beneficial. And I was very aware of, when sometimes when our child is not listening and they're not being obedient, we have our own emotions and our own process. But I did see that it was effective for him to understand we're going to change this behavior.
This can be, a difficult topic, but the bottom line is you've always operated within the things of love, and you're just trying to share that sometimes, within that we can have these tough feelings, and we can have, these doubts, and we can have these things that we want to refine, not because we've done anything to harm our child, but because we're always striving to grow in love and to examine ourselves and what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how we can continue to be able to provide a greater and greater benefit, to that. Because I know your heart, I know you have always wrestled with things because you're conscientious, like so many people out there, you care. So many people out there are stuck because you want to do what's effective, but you tried everything and nothing has seemed to work. Or maybe you tried some things and just haven't seemed to be effective, including lovingly firm discipline, which can have many different forms: setting boundaries, being able to look at what's important in that child's life and connect it to what's important for their life. What's important in that child's life might be the tablet or desserts or going outside or other privileges. Praying with friends. Yeah. What's important for their life is respect, obedience, to be able to do what they need to do, whether they feel like it or not, and to grow that strength. And in that, sometimes we have questions, sometimes we have doubts, sometimes we're not sure, sometimes we don't know if we've gone a little too far. But none of that is outside of the bounds of, the law or even what's healthy for the child, but more so trying to be healthier. And we're not always going to be perfect in something, but striving with everything we have to get it right in the sense of, what can really empower this child. So sometimes we've got to go outside of ourselves, the norm, the box. What would you say is your last bit of encouragement for caregivers out there today as we bring this to a close? In this practical wisdom, real talk, and when it comes to just discipline in general. So let me ask you this last question: what for you has convinced you that our children need discipline in order to be empowered? That accountability, that affirming with words, but no, not but and just that accountability. What has kind of really shown you the importance of that action, that accountability, and how you think it helps and why you think we need to persevere? Just kind of I asked a lot of 8 questions right there.
A lot of 3 sets of multiple questions, A, B, and C. I will write my dissertation and submit for next week. But overall, I hear your heart. I would encourage caregivers to be in your process, as I said earlier, and to find those like-minded resources, whether they are professional friends or resources that you find online or books, because you can feel alone sometimes, and you're not alone. There are others out there who are on this journey and who would want to walk with you. So I would encourage that, as well as the need for accountability, affirming accountability. Our children need boundaries. We think we're still figuring life out and we're still trying to live our healthiest life. How much more are they trying to figure out how to live their life? And yes, they want to play and have fun, and we want that for them too. We want them to have some life skills, to understand respect and boundaries, and to know how to navigate this world. As you mentioned before, it's broken, and we are broken humans. So giving them tools to help navigate through that brokenness and their own brokenness in love, but also in accountability, I think is, a Christian word is discipleship. It is a form of discipleship. We are helping them in their journey, not only spiritually, but in life. And so is it worth it? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Is it a process? Yes. But you're not alone, and let yourself be in the process and find those like-minded folks that you can journey with and operate from an authentic place of conviction, as we spoke about, and do it in love, unconditional love, and love yourself in the process, and don't live in shame. That's another part of the classes that we teach that my husband has put together. Love yourself in the process and don't live in shame. Just continue to grow, and I think, and you can do it. You are able to do it, and God is able.
Well, thanks, babe, for being here and for sharing your real life talk. And we just thank all of you for being here and tuning in. And we just hope you stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved as we journey together in helping or empowering the child or children in your care, or that you work with professionally, to overcome the challenges that they have, to have the freedom. We're going to talk about also this disclaimer. This information is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any health concerns or before making any decisions about your or your child's or a child's health or treatment. Never disregard any professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of information found here. We thank you. Stay connected, stay tuned, stay involved. Any questions, constructive ones or comments, put them in the chat, and we'll see you next time.